Imagine boarding a flight where the air hostesses were selected like models, the in-flight food was gourmet, and every seat felt like business class. That was Kingfisher Airlines. But while passengers were being wined and dined, the airline was quietly drowning in one of India's biggest corporate debt disasters. Today we unpack the full story, the rise, the recklessness, and the catastrophic fall. To understand Kingfisher, you must first understand Vijay Mallya. Born into a business family, he inherited United Breweries at just 28. He turned Kingfisher beer into India's most recognized alcohol brand, owned the Royal Challengers Bangalore IPL team, sponsored a Formula One team, and lived a life that tabloids couldn't get enough of. He was India's answer to Richard Branson, bold, flamboyant, and utterly convinced that his personal brand could sell anything. In 2005, that anything became an airline. In 2003, the Indian government opened up the skies. Private airlines were allowed to compete freely. Suddenly, flying wasn't just for the elite, it was for the rising middle class. Passenger numbers nearly tripled between 2003 and 2008. New airlines were launching every year. The market was exploding. Into this gold rush walked Vijay Mallya, not with a budget carrier, but with the most expensive, most lavish airline India had ever seen. Kingfisher Airlines launched in May 2005 with a single class of service, and every seat was treated like business class. Wide seats, personal TVs, celebrity-endorsed entertainment, premium meals. The cabin crew wore uniforms designed by fashion designers. The branding was immaculate. Passengers loved it. The press raved. But the price of that luxury was being silently loaded onto a ticking financial time bomb from day one. Here's the brutal truth about Kingfisher's finances. In aviation, there are two critical numbers: CASK, cost per available seat kilometer, and RASK, revenue per available seat kilometer. For a profitable airline, RASK must be higher than CASK. Kingfisher's CASK was among the highest in the industry because of its premium service. But its RASK never kept up. It was, from the very beginning, an airline that spent more per passenger than it earned. Every single flight was quietly losing money. In 2007, Mallya made the decision that would seal Kingfisher's fate. He acquired Air Deccan, India's first low-cost carrier, founded by Captain Gopinath, for roughly 550 crore rupees, plus absorbing its enormous debt. The logic was to gain routes and slots. But strategically, it was a disaster. You now had one company trying to operate a premium service and a budget service simultaneously, with completely different cost structures, cultures, and customer expectations. It was like running a 5-star hotel and a budget hostel under the same roof. After the Air Deccan acquisition, Kingfisher's debt load exploded. It was borrowing from banks to fund operational losses, not to build assets. Banks including State Bank of India, Punjab National Bank, IDBI, and over a dozen others kept extending credit. Why? Partly because Mallya was a prominent public figure. Partly because the airline had significant tangible assets, planes, slots, brand value. And partly because of a phenomenon we see repeatedly in Indian banking, the reluctance to call time on a high-profile borrower. Despite the financial rot underneath, 2008 to 2009 was Kingfisher's peak. It had captured roughly 25% of India's domestic market, the largest share of any single airline. Its brand was everywhere. It had launched Kingfisher First, a genuine business-class product that received international awards. From the outside, it looked like India's greatest aviation success story. The tragedy is that this peak was almost entirely funded by debt. Then the external shocks hit. Aviation fuel, known as ATF, or aviation turbine fuel, accounts for 35 to 50% of an airline's operating cost in India, which is much higher than global averages due to taxation. In 2008, global oil prices spiked to $140 per barrel. Then the global financial crisis hit, destroying premium travel demand. For an airline already bleeding, this was catastrophic. Losses that were manageable on paper became unmanageable in practice. By 2010, Kingfisher was struggling to make payroll. Pilots, engineers, and ground staff were going weeks and then months without receiving their salaries. This isn't just a human tragedy, it's an operational one. Airlines run on precision teamwork. When your pilots are distracted by financial stress, when your engineers are skipping shifts in protest, when morale is at rock bottom, safety and reliability suffer. Flights were being cancelled. The on-time performance, once a point of pride, collapsed. India's aviation regulator, the DGCA, began flagging Kingfisher for safety lapses. Aircraft maintenance was being deferred. Required inspections were being skipped due to cash shortages. The DGCA issued multiple show-cause notices. This was no longer just a financial story. It had become a public safety story. Flying on Kingfisher was, by 2012, a genuine risk. And yet, the airline continued operating, because shutting it down meant confronting the full scale of the banking catastrophe. In 2011, the consortium of 17 lender banks agreed to restructure Kingfisher's debt under the Corporate Debt Restructuring or CDR framework. This gave Mallya extended timelines and reduced interest burdens. In exchange, banks converted some debt to equity, effectively becoming shareholders in a failing airline. This was a massive red flag. Banks were doubling down on bad loans. The restructuring bought time but solved nothing, because the fundamental problem, that Kingfisher lost money on every flight, was never addressed. Perhaps the most infuriating aspect of this story is what Mallya was doing as the airline collapsed. He was spending lavishly, maintaining his Formula One team Force India, throwing extravagant parties, purchasing a luxury yacht. The Kingfisher calendar continued. IPL matches continued. There is documented evidence of funds being diverted from the airline's accounts to other UB Group entities. This wasn't just mismanagement. Investigators later alleged it was deliberate financial misconduct. On October 20, 2012, the DGCA suspended Kingfisher Airlines' operating license. The airline had fewer than 10 aircraft still operational, a skeleton workforce, and had been unable to present a credible revival plan. Flights halted. Thousands of passengers were stranded. Around 6,000 employees lost their jobs. Many still owed months of back salary. India's most glamorous airline was, in a matter of weeks, completely grounded. The 9,000 crore rupees question now was, where had all the money gone, and who would pay for it? When Kingfisher collapsed, 17 Indian banks were left with a combined exposure of over 9,000 crore rupees in non-performing assets. State Bank of India alone had lent approximately 1,600 crore rupees. IDBI Bank, Punjab National Bank, Bank of India, all government-owned institutions were sitting on massive write-offs. This wasn't private investor money. This was public money. Taxpayer money held in these banks. The losses ultimately had to be absorbed by the banking system, weakening the balance sheets of institutions that ordinary Indians trusted with their savings. In 2016, SBI-led consortium formally declared Vijay Mallya a willful defaulter, one of the most serious designations in Indian banking law. A willful defaulter isn't just someone who can't repay a loan. It's someone who has the means to repay but chooses not to, or who diverts funds away from the purpose for which they were borrowed. This distinction matters enormously. It opens the door for criminal prosecution, asset seizure, and international legal action. In March 2016, days before a parliamentary hearing on his debts, Vijay Mallya quietly left India for London. The CBI and ED had been investigating him. Parliament subsequently voted to expel him from the Rajya Sabha. British authorities arrested him in April 2017, but legal battles over extradition have dragged on. As of 2025, Mallya remains in the United Kingdom, appealing court orders. This is a painful symbol of India's continued struggle to hold powerful, well-connected fraudsters accountable. India's Enforcement Directorate has been aggressive in seizing Mallya's assets under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. His famous Kingfisher villa in Goa was attached. Properties in Bangalore and Mumbai were seized. UB holding shares were frozen. Yet despite years of effort, the recovery rate remains well below 20% of the total amount owed. This is the brutal reality of large-scale corporate fraud. The money is often gone, hidden, or locked in slow legal battles by the time agencies act. Mallya's case directly led to India passing the Fugitive Economic Offenders Act in 2018, a law specifically designed to target people who flee India to avoid prosecution in major financial cases. Under this law, courts can confiscate all assets of a declared fugitive without a criminal conviction. Mallya was among the first people designated under this act. It's a bitter irony. His brazen escape from justice actually triggered stronger legislation that may help prevent similar cases in the future. Kingfisher is not unique in its failure. Airlines worldwide have an extraordinarily high failure rate. Swiss Air, once called the Flying Bank, collapsed in 2002 despite Switzerland's reputation for financial prudence. Pan Am, which pioneered modern commercial aviation, was bankrupt by 1991. Alitalia filed for bankruptcy multiple times. The airline industry is uniquely brutal. High fixed costs, volatile fuel prices, razor-thin margins, and intense competition. The lesson is global. Glamour and ambition do not substitute for financial discipline. To understand why Kingfisher failed, look at IndiGo, which launched just 1 year later in 2006 and is today India's largest airline. IndiGo standardized its entire fleet on Airbus A320s, slashing maintenance costs. It focused obsessively on punctuality and cost efficiency. It avoided vanity expenses. Its founders were disciplined operators, not celebrity businessmen. While Kingfisher was serving gourmet meals, IndiGo was counting every rupee. Today, IndiGo controls over 55% of Indian domestic aviation. The lesson: in a margin-thin industry, boring discipline beats flashy ambition. One of the most important and underreported parts of this story is the culpability of the banks. How did 17 banks continue lending to an airline that was visibly losing money year after year? The answer lies in a combination of factors: flawed credit appraisal systems, the prestige of the borrower, political pressure on public sector banks, and the perverse incentive to keep restructuring loans rather than declaring them NPA, since NPAs hurt quarterly performance metrics. This systemic weakness in India's public sector banking contributed directly to the collapse. Kingfisher was one of the first high-profile signals of India's coming NPA non-performing asset crisis, which peaked in 2018 with the banking system carrying nearly 10 lakh rupees crore in bad loans. The same structural failures that allowed Kingfisher's debt to grow unchecked, weak credit governance, political interference, evergreening of loans, were repeated across dozens of other large corporates. India's banking sector spent years recovering from this crisis, with the government forced to infuse massive capital into public sector banks. While the story often focuses on the banks and Mallya, the most human victims of Kingfisher's collapse were its approximately 6,000 employees, pilots, flight attendants, engineers, ground staff. Many went 6 to 9 months without a single salary payment. Provident fund contributions were deducted from salaries, but never deposited with the government. Many employees struggled to make home loan payments, fund their children's education, and pay basic bills. Years of litigation followed as workers tried to recover what they were owed. For most, the recovery was partial at best. Here is one of the most telling ironies of this story. The Kingfisher brand, the name, the logo, the intellectual property, was independently valued at approximately 4,000 crore rupees at the airline's peak. Banks hoped to recover significant amounts by selling the brand. But when it went to auction, there were no viable buyers. A brand that was built on an unsustainable business had no standalone value once the business ceased to exist. This is a fundamental lesson about brand value versus business fundamentals. A brand is worth exactly as much as the business behind it. India's regulators learned important lessons from Kingfisher. The DGCA introduced stricter financial health monitoring for airlines. Minimum net worth requirements for operating licenses were strengthened. The RBI tightened norms around CDR misuse and introduced more rigorous NPA classification rules. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, passed in 2016, was partly designed to speed up resolution of cases like Kingfisher's. These reforms were overdue, and they were paid for, in a sense, by the thousands of people who suffered in Kingfisher's collapse. Just 7 years after Kingfisher, India witnessed another massive airline collapse, Jet Airways, which suspended operations in April 2019 with over 8,000 crore rupees in debt and 23,000 employees affected. The parallels are eerie. Aggressive expansion, heavy debt, owner not cutting costs despite losses, banks restructuring repeatedly instead of acting decisively, and finally, a dramatic shutdown. Jet was eventually acquired through the IBC process by the Jalan Kalrock Consortium, but its revival has been painfully slow. India's aviation sector seems to repeat the same mistakes generation after generation. In hindsight, Kingfisher's collapse looks inevitable. The red flags were visible to anyone who read the annual reports carefully. Operating cash flows were negative from the start. Debt was rising faster than revenues. Auditors flagged concerns in financial statements. Related party transactions between Kingfisher Airlines and other Mallya entities were suspicious. Management attention was clearly divided. These are classic early warning signs of a company in distress, and they were either ignored or dismissed by banks, analysts, and the investing public blinded by the Mallya brand. At its core, Kingfisher's collapse had three mutually reinforcing root causes. First, a fundamentally broken business model, premium service in a price-sensitive market, making losses on every flight. Second, reckless leadership, an owner whose personal brand overshadowed financial reality, who diversified instead of fixing core problems, and who may have misappropriated funds. Third, systemic banking failure. 17 lenders who extended credit without adequate safeguards, restructured instead of acting, and ultimately transferred the cost of their poor lending decisions onto the public. For investors, Kingfisher offers 5 timeless lessons. 1. Always check operating cash flows, not just profits. Profitable-looking companies can be cash flow negative. 2. Debt growing faster than revenue is a red flag, always. 3. Management character matters. A promoter who prioritizes lifestyle over business survival is a red flag. 4. Unit economics. Does the company make money on each individual transaction? Must be checked before scaling. And 5. If auditors are raising concerns in the notes to financial statements, take those seriously. These aren't boring accounting details. They are survival signal. For banking professionals and credit officers, Kingfisher is a textbook case in what happens when due diligence is compromised by borrower prestige. Banks must appraise businesses, not brands. They must read cash flow statements, not just asset valuations. They must have clear triggers for escalation when covenants are breached. The CDR process must never become a mechanism to hide bad loans. Political pressure to support large employers is real, but bending to it transfers risk from borrowers to the public. Strong credit governance is not just about compliance. It is about protecting the savings of ordinary depositors. Vijay Mallya's Kingfisher Airlines is one of the most spectacular and instructive business failures in India's modern economic history. It teaches us that branding without financial discipline is just theater. That borrowed money, deployed recklessly, eventually destroys everything it was meant to build. That banks and regulators must be guardians of the public trust, not enablers of powerful promoters. And that the true cost of corporate misgovernance is never borne by the people at the top. It falls on the employees who lose their jobs, the depositors whose banks weaken, and the taxpayers who fund the bailouts. The good times, as it turned out, were never free.